Step into realms where the heart takes flight, where strategy meets the edge of night. The Dungeons, Dragons, and Psychology podcast. Prepare your mind. Now be our guest.
Welcome, Cyclothids, to the Dungeons, Dragons, and Psychology podcast. It is I, Robert Walker, your host, and today I am joined by Jordan, the DM from Modified Roll. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good morning / good evening.
Yeah, indeed. We have quite the time difference between the two of us, but I'm very excited to have you on the show. I know we've been chatting for a while, and I've been listening to your Season 2 of Modified Roll. But before we get into that, whenever I have a new guest on the show, I always like to ask a little bit about your background with role-playing so that my cyclothids can get to know you a little bit better. So if you don't mind, when did you get started role-playing? What got you into it? What got you hooked?
So funny enough, my sort of introduction to role-playing and TTRPGs was a bit stop and start. Back in secondary school, I had a couple of friends who played D&D, and I tried to get into the game with them, but would never. There was a bit of tension, and that they were very protective of their group, so I never quite got the invite I was sort of badgering for. So I kept thinking, I want to do this. So then I went to uni, and a couple of my friends who were also massive nerds, we talked about doing it, but then it was like, oh, we're already, they'd already got me into World of Warcraft at this point. It's like, well, we're raiding at the weekend, so no time for a game as well. So that didn't happen. Then I moved to England, and I said, right, that's it. I've been wanting to play a TTRPG for a while. I'm playing a TTRPG. I went to my local game shop. I put up some flyers and eventually got a group together and started. But well, funny enough, I think the first thing we played was a Fate game, as opposed to D&D or anything like that. Played that for a few months, and then sort of petered out. But nobody locally wanted to play D&D, so I went online. It was just. I eventually found a game online that lasted for about 6 months, and then I said, "All right, stuff this. I'm going to run a game." At this point I have played maybe 3 months of Fate and 6 months of D&D. I was like, no, I'm just going to run a game. Went back to the local game shop, put up flyers, say, look, I'm looking for players this time, and I started running a game. And funny enough, the campaign I wrote for that game was the one that I'm using for Season 2 of Modified Roll.
Awesome.
At this point, we're about about half as far in as that in real life campaign got. So I've still got plenty of pre-written stuff to get through. But so that was just under a decade ago now. So my experience has been almost exclusively D&D 5e. Haven't played any of the earlier editions or Pathfinder. I have done a couple of other gaming systems as one-shots or guesting on other podcasts. So I've done a bit of Call of Cthulhu with the lovely Craftians.
Fun.
And things like that. So yeah, I'm a bit of a basic bitch when it comes to TTRPGs, unfortunately. It's mostly just 5e.
Yeah. Well, I say the majority of my gaming career is all Dungeons and Dragons. We have played quite a bit of Pathfinder, which, I mean, they're very comparable systems, especially if you look at 3rd edition D&D and 1st edition Pathfinder. They're like cross-compatible almost. Yeah. So similar. So it sounds like you've kind of fallen into that role of almost a forever DM in order to just be able to play.
Almost. Funnily enough, at this point, all the games, I'm in 2 long-running campaigns, which is the podcast one and an in-real-life one, which I run with Danny from the podcast. That was actually how Danny was actually a good friend of my partner. They worked together for a while, and I knew Danny was into like her cosplay and other nerdy bits. So I said to her, I'm trying to run an in-real-life game. Do you want to play D&D? And she went, fuck yes I do.
Yeah.
So I trapped her. I trapped our podcast sponsor because he actually moved quite local to me. So I said to him, I was like, well, how often do you play? I was like, well, funny enough, I run a dice shop and never get to play. I was like,
Oh,
well,
no.
we're gonna fix that. You can
Right
play
now.
with me. Yes, I caught another fella I work with, fella play hockey with, and now we've been playing Dragon Heist for over a year. So between that
Fun.
and the podcast game, sort of play those fairly regularly, and then I've run sort of, I say professional air quotes, professionally run games at like UK Games Expo and stuff, which is one of the bigger TTRPG conventions here in the UK. So yeah, it's a rare occasion I get to play a game, but I don't mind it. After buying all the shit to run games as a DM, I was like,
it's a big
at least I have an
investment.
excuse to use them. Yeah, I can use them all. It's fine.
So let me ask you, do you have a favorite moment, either as a player or as a GM, that really stands out to you as like, this is why I love role-playing games?
So I was thinking about this, knowing that this is one of your questions. It's actually one where I was an utter bastard for that in real life game of Dragon Heist. I have written a little supplement because I like using cursed items, but I know that especially at lower levels, a cursed item can like make or break a game.
Oh yeah,
because your players can be completely screwed. So I made a supplement called Triskevale Fur Lines, Trinkets and Curiosities, which is available in the DM's Guild. Just to start immediately plugging my own shit.
perfect.
And it's a bunch of not quite cursed magic items, with the concept being that Triskevale is a magic item creator, but he's also a bit of a trickster. So he'll claim the magic item does one thing, but in reality it does another. But none of these things are like, you're never going to be possessed by a demon and have to be actually, you're never going to hold on to a weapon that you can never let go of and will try to kill your teammates if they take out.
I know some of them are crazy.
Yeah, it's nothing like that. The in real life Dragon Heist game, and one of the draws to Triskevale is all of his items are super, super cheap for a reason. I introduced him in this Dragon Heist game. The players went into the shop and went, holy crap, all these magic items are so cheap, and proceeded to buy like 2 each.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
I then put them in a complete, not no spoilers for the game, because there's a completely like homebrew thing I put in based on one of the players' backstories. But they were trying to rescue some people who were captured by a cult. So they went into this basement of this building in the Docks Ward, found it full of devils, killed a few off, and then they got to a room where there was a split. They could go one way or the other. Being the geniuses that they are, they decided to split the party.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful.
The paladin went down a set of stairs, and when he got halfway down, he could see a chapel that was like destroyed, and he could spot at the far end 2 spine devils. The dwarven bard went through one of the other doors, walked through a mostly empty room that seemed to be like beds and trunks and stuff, opened a door, and immediately was face to face with a Cambion. Unfortunately, at that exact moment, the paladin, who has a very low intelligence, decided to use one of the magic items I had given them, he had bought, which is called the Talking Tines. These are essentially like stone to far speech, but they're not limited by use. The idea being you ring the talking tine like it's like a tuning fork, and while it's vibrating, you can speak into it, and then all the other ones will begin to vibrate. And if you hold them to your ear, the message will repeat.
Oh, cool.
What actually happens?
Okay.
You hit the tine, you talk into it, everyone else's tine vibrates, you put it to your ear, and it essentially shrieks in your ear, deafening you. Everyone but the dwarf failed their constitution check.
Oh, no.
So the dwarf is face to face with a Cambion, and all of these little tines have essentially shrieked. So the 2 spine devils know the paladin is there. Nobody can hear the dwarf when he shouts, "There's a devil here." But they can see the paladin fighting them. So the paladin being, and I applaud him for his ability to stay in character. He plays them stupid. He says, okay, I see that these devils are rushing me. I'm on a stairway. They can't get past me, but they're just going to start attacking me. I activate one of the other magic items. I was like, oh God, Grady, what are you doing? My character's stupid. He would not have realized that this magic item is fake. I activate the Ring of Turtle Shell, which is supposed to give you a bonus to your AC for a minute. No, it reduces your movement speed to 5 feet.
Oh, no. Wonderful.
So everyone is deaf. He's now backing up the stairs so slowly. Luckily, he is such a high armor class that these 2 spine devils, which are throwing their spines at him and trying to attack him, literally cannot hit him. The problem is 2 rooms away, the dwarf is one-on-one trying to fight a Cambion. And were it not for the fact that that Cambion kept failing its con checks on the Thunder Wave that he kept using in the hopes that it would attract somebody's attention, he would have been outright slaughtered.
It's moments like that they're so much fun when you look back on them and you talk about them. That everybody has a laugh about them, but I also find some of the issues I've run into with moments where I've been a bastard is nobody ever forgets about it in later campaigns. And then every time you give them an item or you give them something, they're always paranoid that it's going to be just like last time.
Yeah, I know. We sat down for the next session, and even then, like Danny and a few of them were still like, I still can't fucking believe you did that to us. I was like, hey, I didn't make you split the party.
That's right. That was all on you. You split the party. That's like a cardinal rule. Don't split the party. So
D&D rule 101.
Can you tell my listeners a little bit about Modified Roll for those who maybe haven't heard anything about it or haven't checked it out, and about your current season, what's going on, what are the players up to?
So, history of Modified Role very quickly. We were all what they called guardians. We're essentially volunteers at the first Rooster Teeth convention. You've probably heard of Rooster Teeth YouTube channel, very famous at the minute. Well, they were very famous. They're sort of like they've made their niche now, and they're sort of sitting in it. The first convention they held in the UK was in 2017. We were all volunteers, and they have their website where they have all these volunteers in different group chats and stuff, and you can set up your own little chats. And I made a suggestion. I was like, does anyone want to play D&D? Through that, I think 3 or 4 games actually started running, just because so many people replied. I was like, okay, everyone here, who wants a DM? Cool, grab a couple of people and go play a game. And originally Liam, who DM'd season 1, DM'd our game. We got together, talking about what the game was going to be like. And I said, right, guys, I've been, like, I'm going to be honest, bit of an ulterior motive here. I have been listening to a lot of D&D podcasts, and would anyone mind if we tried recording it and seeing if we could turn it into a podcast? Bearing in mind, at this point, none of us had proper recording mics. I have no experience with sound editing or anything. Like, we had 3 of the guys originally were using just headset mics. It was not great. And you can probably tell as much from the first few episodes. But with it being like that, I made the mistake of just immediately jumping in, trying to record the first stuff instead of us trying a couple of one-shot things. We just jumped straight into the game, and we had a bit of a rotation of players initially, which actually I think because the first couple of bits we recorded were so poor, we actually didn't put out an episode until like 3 or 4 sessions in, by which point we've already lost 3 players and gained a new one. And then I think pretty soon after that, we brought on another new player, which was Liam's dad. But that game ran I think we played that for 3 or 4 years.
Nice. And
the thing was, we actually recorded once every 2 weeks, but we released once every 2 weeks as well. And the episodes were only half a session. So we were like exponentially creating content faster than I could edit it. So actually, when we sort of agreed, sort of during lockdown, we all sort of looked back on it, decided we wanted to take a bit of Liam wanted to take a bit of a break as DM. We wanted to try something a bit different. So we actually have like a ton of stuff that didn't go out, just because at that point we're like, the podcast isn't going where we want. Let's try something a bit different. And that's where I held my hand up and said, look, I've been DMing for a bit. I have an idea to run, which was this previous campaign I've run. And that's what we did. We took we had a couple, Liam and his dad stepped back. I brought on Danny and her friend Deadly, and that's where season 2 started off. So it's a brand new story, a couple of new players, different DM, a little bit of a different style. And I love Liam to pieces, and I've said this, I think I've said this in a couple of other chats with a couple of other people. He is a very good DM. Like, I would never say otherwise, but his style of DM is very good for an at-game play, like an at-table play. But because it's very technical, he uses lots of really cool maps. He has lots of really nice, cool stuff set up visually for us. That's where it sort of fell in the podcast. And that's one of the things I try to come back to, being much more audio descriptive. And it's one of the reasons I've actually told the guys for season 2, we're barely going to use maps. And when we do, it's just going to be for checking distances in combat.
Right.
So that's why I hope there's an audio difference in that you can tell we're trying to be a lot more descriptive about what our characters are doing, what things look like. So that's where we're trying to go with season 2, to be a lot more sort of an audio experience and not just a D&D experience.
That is definitely something I would struggle with if I were to try and do a live play game, because I also, I mean, I'm one of those people who's like, I use a lot of props. I use a lot of things for the characters to get their hands on, and see putting puzzle pieces together, which just doesn't translate if you don't have a way to see what's happening. But so starting season 2, one thing I do want to talk about, because when I started listening to it, it was so fascinating listening to your introductory sessions that you did, single sessions with a single player, and you role played out pieces of their character backstory.
Yeah.
And so when we went into episode 1, we all had a very good idea of what the characters were like, what their personality was like, and what they've been through and experience that brought them to that point, which I just thought was a great idea. It's something I had never really done before, but I wanted to let you know, because I had incorporated this idea into the most recent game I just started a few weeks ago by actually incorporating so much more about what the characters did in their backstory into the campaign and into the characters. It's so cool.
It does make a big difference.
So was it something you'd done before, or was this like just something you thought it would work really well for the audio setting?
We'll be right back.
Hey, Cyclithids, if you love the Dungeons, Dragons, and Psychology podcast and want to help keep it alive, there are a ton of ways you can support the show. Join us on Patreon for exclusive content like NPC character sheets, early access to new products, and even first looks at DM's Assistant app. You can also grab gaming-inspired merch on the Etsy shop, Games for Games, or pick up one of my books, The Player's Handbook to Real Life, or Session Zero, the DMG to Writing Great Campaigns in any system. And even if financial support isn't in the cards for you, you can still help by sharing the show, leaving reviews, or introducing new players to our community. Links are always in the show notes, and thank you for being the heart of our adventure.
A bit of both. I've not sat down and done like one-on-one sessions with people before, like a played out session. But obviously the whole Session Zero thing, I always like to talk to people individually outside of the Session Zero. Once we've sort of established who their characters are, I'll then sit down with them one-on-one and say, okay, we've got your character backstory. I'll run through bits of that with them and just be like, okay, you know, this happened. How do you see this impacting your character? Which parts of this do you want to like revisit? Is there anything here that's like not fleshed out that you want me to sort of like flesh out as we play? And that's always just, like I say, I always do that. Like I say, I've run a couple of games. It's something I like to do because I do like to incorporate player backstory into the campaign. Like the first, like I say, the campaign I'm running, I ran for another group first. I sort of pre-wrote a lot of it. So in that original one, the way it played out up to the point we are in the podcast, there were some parts that were vastly different because it was more styled around the characters' backstories.
Right.
So there was one of the characters in the original campaign who was a paladin whose village was wiped out by a devil cult. So a lot more of his stuff was focused around, you know, rooting out devil worshippers and stuff. So it was very much a different lens to see that part of the campaign through. But the reason we recorded them, like you say, is to give you a much better idea of the characters. It's a chance to highlight each of these players and their unique characters and introduce them to the listener. Excuse me. I understand, and I know why some campaigns do it. Some will specifically avoid, like especially in a podcast, they will specifically avoid going too much into the backstory of a character because they want it to be sort of delivered naturally through the story. And I know some will actually do. I've listened to a few where they've actually done like cutaways to flashbacks, like, you know, 5 episodes in. And I think that's great. Like, I don't mind that. I just preferred it to be a case of whenever people started listening to us, they are already, you know, drawn to the characters. They have an idea of who these characters are instead of, you know, 3 episodes in going, which one's the Dragonborn again?
Yeah.
Because it's very hard sometimes listening to a podcast, especially with D&D, where you're constantly introducing like NPCs, different characters. They're all talking to each other. it can be very hard to remember who's playing which character sometimes. So that was another reason we did it. It was just to be like, yeah, okay, Danny is playing the elven rogue. You know that because you've listened to an hour of just me talking to Danny about her elven rogue.
Nice. Okay, so the main topic we have on for today is dream sequences and using dreams or visions in games. This is something that can be utilized in so many different ways, and it's something I've done personally quite a bit in past stories of mine, especially visions, especially when I have religious characters. It's one of those things I think fits really well for having a cleric or a paladin or somebody who's getting a divine vision or divine inspiration of some sort. But we'll start just by chitter-chatting about some of the ways we've used it and some of the ideas that we've had about them. So what sort of dream sequences have you used, Jordan, in the past in your games?
Well, probably I've used them a lot more in the podcast game just because dream sequence stuff can be very, say, air quotes, visual. Like you can do a lot with that to make a very interesting sort of just interesting scenario, an interesting situation. You can describe things that you can't really describe in a normal game. So I've used them a couple of times in the game. And the first instance is actually at the end of each of the backstory episodes where I did a sort of like air quotes prophetic dream for each of them. So as they're all setting off on their adventure, they've all left their home or wherever it was they were, and they all fall asleep the night before their adventure sort of begins, air quotes. And the way I did this was I just drew from the deck of many things and used that as like the cornerstone feature of the dream. And it was ridiculous how well I'm not joking. I'm sure there's people listening that thought, oh, that wasn't random. You just picked the one that worked. No, I literally shuffled them and had the guys pick a number, and I counted that number into the deck and picked that card. And each one of them, I think bar one, was like a perfect sort of one-to-one for that character.
Nice.
Like the paladin of Palor drew the sun. The Twilight cleric of Selune drew the Fates, and I think it was the Dragonborn paladin who's sort of on a mission from Sardior drew the Talon. It's like, what the fuck?
It's perfect. Can't mess with tarot cards, man. They always know the truth.
Well, they're not even tarot cards. I have a tarot deck and didn't use it.
Yeah, that's something I have used in games before, especially when they rewrote it so that they associated the deck of many things with like the major arcana from the tarot deck.
Yes,
I think it added so much more flavor, so that you could bring that flavor into your games and sort of have like this occult feel, which is just awesome. And that sort of thing works really well with dreams too. I think one of the things I love about dreams is it gives you opportunity to, I mean, we're playing a fantasy game, but to be a little bit more fantastic than your typical fantasy game. You get to have the fun music, the really creepy, dreamscapes. You dim the lights. I do like the visual part of dreams when I'm DMing, because it does have a very specific mood that can be set that kind of just makes the players feel uneasy and get them ready for something unique,
It did make me laugh because like I quite like doing the dreams, but I only sort of realized how much the players enjoyed them recently, because we did the prophetic dream at the start, and the other way I've used it is like I'm not doing it like milestone, like end of campaign type stuff, but every time they hit like a difficult point or they complete something challenging, I'll say to them before they do their long rest that night, okay, cool, what's your character feeling? What you've just went through all of this, how has that made your character feel? What are you thinking about at the minute? And then I gave each of them a dream based on what they said. So the paladin said, I'm wondering, am I living up to Palor's, am I making Palor proud of what I'm doing? So his dream was him standing in a giant, endless field of gold and wheat and grain underneath a bright blue sky with the sun shining down and the warmth washing over him. And it just, the whole making him feel literally the warmth of Palor in a dream. But it was like a couple of sessions later where they're in an inn, and I start describing, like, okay, so you've all bedded down for the night and you're all just getting off to sleep. And one of them went, "Oh, a dream." I was like, "No, you're not getting one tonight." And I was like, they're actually, I was like, oh, holy shit, these guys are actually excited for these stupid little dreams I'm describing. It's like, no, you don't get one tonight. You haven't earned it yet.
That's great. Yeah, in the last campaign I played in, my wife was in it as well, and her character had this specific quirk in the party where she was sort of getting some dreams that were partially prophetic, and it was really cool. We all got very excited, like you're saying, whenever something like that would happen, because it was sort of like a here's plot. Go ahead and take it. And I think that's one of the cool things about it, is because typically, maybe not always, dreams are sort of like harbingers of plot for the players.
Yeah, I think it could be, like you say, it can be very useful for like delivering plot warnings or prophecies and stuff as well. I think it's a very specific way to use dreams. And I think that's probably the one that gets used the most in stuff like D&D. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting way to do
it. Is there anything that you would suggest not using a dream for, or have you ever run into any troubles where you've used a dream and then the players use that foreknowledge or prophecy or whatever it is against you?
Well, like I say, I try not to overly use them, and it's actually I try to actually use them for a prophecy or like a plot development thing very limited, or in very limited ways, because if you're not delivering plot development to players enough that the only way you can get it across is like, right, fuck it, an angel comes and tells you what to do in your dream, then you're sort of limiting your own plot development.
Yeah.
So prophesized dreams or dreams that affect plot, I try to use as a limited way and only where it makes sense. So like if a player has been like praying to their god to say, we haven't a fucking clue, where should we be going? Then I'll give them like a vague sort of, you see a city on a hill with a waterfall next to it. It's like they wake up and go, oh fuck, I know that place. So I've not had it used against me or anything, but I try, like I said, I try to avoid prophesized stuff. Dreams for me in games, they can be very useful as like a prophecy or plot development, but for me it's more, I try to use it more like we would, like, how dreams work in real life, where it's like your brain sorting through information. And sometimes it doesn't make sense, but I try to relate it to what's been happening to them and what the characters are thinking about and feeling about more than anything else.
Yeah, I think in terms of like processing or sorting information, I think it could also be used as like giving clues to something that they might have missed.
Yes.
Especially if they have all the pieces in their possession, like, okay, the riddle's right there, but they're, you don't want this story to drag on until they figure it out. Sometimes that could take sessions, but maybe give them a clue, a little bit of a hint that might push them in the right direction, I think is another fun way.
Yeah, that would definitely be very useful. To be fair, I probably could have done that in a dream, but in our last recording, we literally had a minute of them sort of like laying out the plot and going, but how do these connect? And me going, right, well, your characters would be able to work out this. Like,
yeah.
Because that's why I hate listening to games and podcasts where you've got the players have all this information, and obviously the DM has a very specific plan.
Yeah.
And you can tell all this stuff is meant to connect, and the players are going, look, we know this connects, but we can't work it out. And the DM just going, you can't work it out. Well, look, throw them a bone. Like, make them roll an insight check, make them roll an intelligence check, and if they do, fucking explain it. Like, their players aren't stupid.
Right. Yeah, that is the interesting thing. I mean, sometimes you're playing a character that has a vastly higher intelligence than yourself. Exactly. So you might just have to, realize that maybe this person didn't figure out, but their character definitely has by now.
Yeah, I was like, we literally had the guys talking about, it's like, I said, well, look, here's the facts as you have them. Like, because obviously when we record, it's once every couple of weeks. In game, it's been a couple of days. It's like, here's the information you've gathered over the last few days. And then they'd start throwing out random, oh, does that mean this? Does that mean this? And you'd be like, well, no, because it couldn't be that, because you also know this, and you know that, this is tied to this. I don't have an issue as a DM sitting down and going, you have all this information. If you want to sit down now and try and work it out, I will walk through it with you and make sure you get to the right conclusions. Because there's nothing worse than a bunch of players working through a thing on their own with no DM input, coming to the wrong conclusion, and then acting on it when you, as a DM, know that in character they would not have come to that conclusion.
Right, they should have everything there to figure this out. in the game world, if not in the real world.
Exactly.
Do you remember? Did you ever read any of the Wheel of Time books or anything like that?
Yes.
So you're pretty familiar with the World of Dreams that's used in there.
Yes.
But I don't know if you ever have checked it out, but I do remember some years ago, I think it was right around 2012 or so. No, it was even before that. It was even before that. It had to have been like 2002. They released a D20 role-playing game of the Wheel of Time.
I had heard of this, never played it.
One single
Nobody
book,
else ever heard of it.
Yeah, one single book. I was super into reading the stories at that time, so I have a hardback copy of it. But what's one of the cool things about it, and the reason I bring this up, is because they did like a whole big chapter on the World of Dreams and all the ways that, you know, characters can interact with the World of Dreams, and it has a lot of like symbolism in dreams and what people might be doing and stuff like that. So it's just, I think if people out there are listening and they want some interesting ideas, try and find a PDF copy of that book or something, because it does have some really cool stuff that just never made it into D&D but was still D20 based.
Yeah, I've never mind the listeners. I'm going to look this up after we're finished. That sounds really interesting.
Awesome.
I'm
Well,
going to look that up.
let's go ahead and go into tricks of the trade. So today, for Tricks of the Trade, I've asked Jordan to come up with a couple ideas of how to incorporate dreams into your game or visions. I also have one idea of my own, which I hope isn't going to be too much of a spoiler for my players in my current campaign, but we'll see how it goes. Do you want to go ahead and get started first, Jordan?
Yeah, I'll go first just because I've got two, so it'll be a nice bookend one. We've sort of touched on these a lot already, but just sort of like laid out how you might want to use them or how you functionally they would work as a DM. So first of all, using dreams as a prophecy or a prophetic dream, this can be done with a lot of different ways. But the main thing is you have to know what plot point it is you're trying to get across. If you want to, you can sort of, as we've talked about, sort of symbolism in dreams is very important. So you want to come up with something that's going to be related to the plot point. Or the other way of using it is if you don't know what the plot is going to be, or you want to use this for a little side quest or as a break from the main campaign, using some form of symbolism to then generate a short adventure from. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. Like I've mentioned, I used the Deck of Many Things to come up with a bit of symbolism, which I tied into the character's like final backstory dream.
Right.
But you can use pretty much, like you say, you can use tarot cards, you can use the Deck of Illusions, you could use like random roll tables or just use a random Google image search, but then expand on that visual to make the dream sequence and use parts of that to inspire like your short adventure. Awesome. So you could, and you can use that, like I say, both ways. You can use that to generate an adventure and just sort of ad lib that and riff off of that, or you can use it as a cornerstone to build around a plot point that you already had. Or if you're feeling exceptionally adventurous, don't plan a damn thing. Just throw out lots of symbolism and then let the players wake up from the dream and go, what did it mean?
You have that too, or come up with great. Sometimes I do that. I'll throw out an idea to the players that has like a lot of vague symbolism that could sort of connect. And then I'll wait for them to come up with a really great idea. And like, okay, that's it. That's the one. We're going to go with that one. Awesome. So my idea is something that if my players in my current campaign are listening, go ahead and plug your ears for about a minute because I'm going to go. No, it's all right. So we are trying to find a forgotten goddess, and part of what they are doing is they're going on a pilgrimage. So what I'm doing is literally driving each section of the story by the time when they receive the next vision or the next dream. So it shows them where they need to go and what steps they need to, not the steps, but what sort of experience this goddess had before she ascended to godhood. So they're sort of reliving her life and getting brief visions of what it is they need to go do next, what experience it is they need to have next. So things like that, where you can, that would be a very big plot driver type of a dream, because it really is the plot at that point.
That's an interesting way of doing it. But again, that's another one I've seen before. They have a dream and you're reliving someone else's experience one to one. much less sort of vague symbolism and much more, here's a thing that happened in the past that you have no control over,
Right.
but you get to experience first person.
Exactly.
It's always interesting. You do that. You see that a lot in different media. I think it's a very interesting way of doing a dream. But yeah, my second one, a final one, is again one we've talked about already quite extensively, but just as a way of using it, dreams as moments of reflection. So after an important event, and like I say, it doesn't have to be like the end of an arc or the end of an adventure, but like say as part of their journey, they stopped in a village that was being attacked and a lot of people were dying and they've fended off a monster attack and they've had to spend several days like healing people and helping build up the defenses. That would be like in character a harrowing experience, especially if it wasn't one they were prepared for. So like if there's been some like really interesting NPC interactions, if the players have got a bit, involved and emotional over this, say to them at the end of it, okay, what's your character feeling? How has that affected you? What's that? What are you thinking about before you go to sleep that night? And then have the dream be a reflection of that. Like I said, it could be, if they go to bed saying, oh, I'm wondering how, what my parents would think, tie that into the dream, have them like sitting with their parents or, reference their parents in some way or a familial bond. If they tell you, oh, my character's like pissed off or my character's like upset because they fucked up, not to punish them, but you can give them, and we've talked about dreams, you can give them a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like make it a lot more, show them the fears that they're talking about. If they say, I'm worried about this or I'm afraid of this happening, have that incorporated dreams, like have their fears chasing them in the dreams or built around the fear to make the dream and the nightmare. Because that, D&D is not all like building the players up and making them feel good. Sometimes it's being like, yeah, okay, your character feels shitty and that's going to be reflected in what happens, in their own psyche.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I think you can also use you can use one-to-one scenes of things that happen, have them relive the scene in the dream, but maybe things are a bit different. Maybe, the child that they healed up and injured in the dream is staring them dead in the eye the whole time or something. Just, take scenes and just twist them a little bit to make them that little bit more surreal.
Awesome. I think another interesting thing to remember too is dreams don't always need to be descriptive in game. They can also be places where the characters are playing. You can have them play through dreams, and I think that is one of the most interesting things because they can interact with such strange and unique things that they wouldn't see in the realism we try to bring to a normal game.
Yeah, and there's also that sort of if they know it's a dream or whether they in character know it's a dream or not. There's also that little bit of stakes aren't quite as high. Unless you're going full on Matrix, you die in the dream, you die in real life.
Right.
Like it's, you can you can make it a case of it doesn't matter what happens here because it's a dream, and they have a bit more leeway with that.
That's true. Yeah, you can throw some harder things at them, some really scary things you might not normally risk, and their death is just the point at which they wake up, which could be interesting as well.
Exactly. You're swallowed by the black dragon and wake up. I was like, oh shit,
yes,
I didn't know that was a dream.
Exactly. Okay, so before we go, let me ask you, is there anything you want to talk about, anything you want to plug, and how can my listeners connect with you?
Yeah, well, obviously, mostly podcasts. We're Modified Role on pretty much everything. We're mostly on Twitter. I've started trying to use Instagram recently. I'm not very good at it, but we're getting there. Personally, like I say, I've been running games and I write a couple of bits. So I'm on the DMs Guild, just Jordan Carmichael. You can find my personal Twitter is Wish I Was a Bard. I don't put out stuff super often, obviously with a full-time job, running the podcast and every other fucking thing I do. It's sort of sporadic when it goes up. I am, funnily enough, hoping to put out a little supplement. It's probably only going to be like 5 or 6 pages long, which will be about using dreams in your game. It'll come with a bunch of like pre-rolled tables for symbolism and how to use them. So that might go up this year if I'm lucky. By the time I get it finished writing and edited.
Well, make sure whenever you do get it out, let me know. We can add a link to it in this episode and everything too.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Sometime in the future, look forward to that.
Yeah. But that's pretty much it. I'm trying to do a bit more reaching out, like with yourself, reach out to a few other podcasts. I'm hoping to run a few one-shots for people.
Fun. And
just genuinely get a bit more interact with the community again. We did try that quite a bit in season 1, with season 2, we're trying to get things solidified with a number of episodes out, but now we're trying to reach out and just, be a bit more interactive with the community again now that we're settled back in.
Awesome. Okay, well, Cyclithids, if you like this episode, please check out Modified Roll. It's currently in the midst of season 2. Great show. I'll put a link in the show notes for this episode so you can get to it from there if you don't find it in any of your favorite platforms. Also, subscribe to this podcast. Check out my book, Session Zero, The DM Tree to Writing Great Campaigns in Any System. It'll be available on Amazon, and there'll be a link in the show notes. And feel free to send me an email if you have any suggestions, comments, or ideas for future shows, or if you'd like to collaborate. The address is all one word, dungeonsdragonspsychology@gmail.com. Once again, thank you so much, Jordan, for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And as always, Cyclithids, we will see you next session.